Okay, it's the same slide we had. So, you know, basically the same point. Everything's, our avocados are, you have the same diseases and insect problems, and they need the same amount of water, same amount of fertilizer. If you want to produce a full crop, I mean, you can be a backyard grower and put on a lot less water, and you're going to get reduced size and reduced yield, and sometimes no yield, but you can have an avocado. But a commercial grower, because of course, doesn't want to do that. Yeah, I tried to convince my wife I needed a helicopter for my backyard. So backyard culture with avocados, and over the years I've had quite a few calls about my avocado trees dropping leaves in the pool. And so this guy's got a cover over it. He just sweeps them off, and then when they want to go swimming, they pull the cover back when they go swimming, and they put it back. So that's what you got to do. And also, this is a neighborhood where they've had some complaints from the neighbors about blocking their view. And they brought over the rules and regulations and taped them on his front door, outlined the rules. But it said for a corner lot. He didn't have a corner lot, so you had to be careful about those kind of rules and things. But you can keep it pruned down, and that's really what you should do. I saw a little house down in Coronado with a backyard probably about the size of this room, and he had one huge 30-foot tall tree. You know, how is he going to bring that down without something falling on his house or the neighbor's house? You know, so you really should never let that tree get that tall. And then also we've seen some situations where at the end of the year, some people have pumped their pool water thinking they want to save the water on their tree, or the neighbor on the other side of the fence does it, and it steeps over underneath your tree. I've seen that quite a bit. The salt accumulation in that pool water can almost kill a tree. So you got to put it down the drain, guys. You know, you just can't use that on avocados. Same things we're going to talk about. This Sonia talked about a little bit. House avocados freeze about 29 degrees, so you've got to have a good site. That means mostly be up on higher up on the hill. If you're down the valley or where the cold air kind of sinks in there, you know, warm air rises and cold air sinks, so you're going to have some frozen trees here. Fuerte fruit takes a little bit more colder, and then the Mexican race of avocados, the pure Mexicans like Mexicola, can get down. That's about as low as you can go, about say 24 degrees. And usually we say that for about 4 hours. 4 hours, you're going to get fruit damage. If you go longer than that, then you start getting branch damage and major damage. So, okay, avocados don't do very well in clay soil, and there's a lot of reasons they don't get good aeration. Plus, they have a lot of problems with Phytophthora cinnamomum. It's avocado root rot. It makes a perfect environment for the zoospores that Phytophthora swim through the soil. They can survive in clay. In fact, I've got my high-density avocado trial on a clay soil, and we actually, with very careful irrigation, we got through the hot summer last year really well. We didn't lose any trees, so it can be done. The trees look great. And you got to keep your leaf mulch on the ground. So if you're in the backyard and you have this big pile of leaves piling up, we've got some people want to go out there with a rake and rake them all up. And it was classic. I had a couple from, I think, Maine. They moved here from Maine into Fallbrook, and they had bought an avocado grove. So the first thing they did, they went out and raked up all the leaves and all the trees in their grove. They probably had about a 2-acre grove. Bagged them all up, and they had all these bags out there. They called me and said, well, we got all that done, now what do we do next? Put them all back. Because they have very shallow root system. They feed right under that leaf mulch, and they recycle other nutrients. So they pull a lot of nutrients right back into the tree. Like I said, keep the trees away from the houses and the pools, and then do some pruning. And they need some space. This is actually a lemon tree here growing into the neighbor's yard here. Sometimes they knowingly or unknowingly retaliate. Oh, yeah. Okay, well, this is a citrus tree. On the other side of that fence, that citrus tree is dying on the right side. You see that? And let's see if I can get this over here. Right in this area here. Over here, the neighbors had a pool, but they kept all their pool chemicals right there. And every once in a while, a bottle would spill, and of course, it'd run right under here. And I think they did that by accident, but you know, we've had some situations, maybe I really shouldn't tell you this.
I'll tell them.
I used to work for the Orange County Agriculture Department, and we kept getting calls from Laguna Beach. My trees are dying, and they like died overnight. You know, what kind of terrible disease do we have here? Well, we couldn't figure it out, and apparently underground people have spread the word. You can put rock salt on a tree if it's blocking your view of the ocean, and then you can kill that tree. And they go down really quick. And of course, the rock salt, when you water it in, you can't see it. So we started taking soil samples, and the salt content was off the chart. So, you know, I don't know how you stop that kind of thing, but that can happen. So if you see a tree die suddenly, that's not how a disease works. It's been poisoned, usually. Okay, we have 3 avocado races. We have Mexican, Guatemalan, and West Indian. And these are our characteristics here. The Mexican are short time period from flowering to maturity. So they're flowering in April. They start to be, you can pick them probably starting in November, sometimes a little earlier, sometimes a little later, but that's about right. So there's Mexican. The leaves are anise-scented, so you can go crush a leaf and it smells like licorice, anise. So you can always tell that. The other 2 races, you can't smell that. This fruit is small. They have a big pear shape. They taste good, but there's not much flesh there. They have a real big seed there. So that's why they're not in the commercial market. The most frost tolerant, least salt tolerant. Large seed, doesn't do well in the coastal environment. I don't know. That's what it says in the book, but I've seen some that do okay. Guatemalan, that's the most time to maturity, so they're into the next year. So you can have a Guatemalan flowering in April, and it'll be late summer the next year when you're harvesting that fruit, so it take a long time. The skin's real rough, leathery, sometimes woody. In fact, you cannot even press it with your thumb to tell when it's soft enough. You have to take a toothpick and go down through where the stem was attached, right, to see if it's soft. That's how they kind of figure out when to eat it. So that's obviously not a good one for the commercial market either, right? Because people want to be able to tell when they're ripe, when they can eat them. But they're the most salt tolerant. I don't have on here, but they're the least cold tolerant, unfortunately. So we would like to use these for rootstocks. It would be more, especially when people have well water, salty wells. And we're looking at some of those right now. The Israelis took a really hard look at these, and we've got some of those Israeli selections over here now, and they're very salt tolerant. They're pretty good. So you can put a Hass graft on top of that. The only problem is you still have to have fairly warm soil. If your soil is cold, it'll turn your tree yellow for a while. It'll come out of it as the soil warms up. They don't like that cold. Okay. And then the West Indian, another short one, 6 months from flowering to maturity. Leaves don't have an anise-scent. Fruit skin's shiny and leathery, real kind of shiny and pretty, very big fruit usually. They have the lowest oil content. One of the biggest insults I ever saw was in Fallbrook. You know, Fallbrook's the center of avocado production historically for a long time. At the Albertsons market, they had this sign, the weight loss avocado. Like, weight loss avocado, what's this? It's like, well, I asked the produce manager, he said, well, it's really watery. And they're the West Indians. They brought in from Florida. It's like, this is an insult, you know? And it's very tropical, and we don't grow these in California. If you're in Florida, in southern Florida, where they have theirs, they can only grow the West Indians, and they have very short seasons. So each one's about a 2-week span. So they've all selected earlier ones, mid ones, and late ones. So they have a continuous movement through the West Indians. They supply avocados along the East Coast. They're quite upset with the California growers because they can't seem to grow Hass. I've seen Hass trees grow, but they don't fruit. Oops. Okay, so we like these hybrids. Hass and Fuerte are both hybrids of the Mexican and Guatemalan. They try to combine some of the best qualities of both. A little bit bigger fruit, smaller seed, and a little bit tougher peel. They can ship it, but you can still feel it when they soften, when they're ripening. And I just talked about the West Indians here. So Something you need to know, we have what they call A flower types and B flower types. A is a typical tree, mature tree will have 1 million flowers on the tree. And they're opening, and closing, and dropping all the time. So there's a tremendous waste of resources in these trees for all this flowering. And that tells you these trees haven't been adapted to commercial production for very long. It's only been about 100 years since they brought a lot of these up from Mexico, and they haven't been selected like the citrus was. They were using those in 2000 BC in China, so there's a lot of selecting of citrus over the years, but not much here. Anyway, so a typical flower will open as a female in the morning, close overnight, and open as a male in the afternoon the second day. So if you had 10 acres of Hass avocados, they're all A's, they're all female at the same time in the morning, there's no males. And then in the afternoon, they're all males, there's no females. So how do you get pollination? It's usually the crossover right around noon. It's when you have some females and some males, and so that's the deal. B is just the other type, like bacon, zutanos, fuertes are all bee flowers. They open as a female in the afternoon, close overnight, and open as a male in the morning. So if you put them side by side, if you have an A and a B side by side, you always have a female here, male here in the morning, male here, and female here in the afternoon. So as long as it's a bee pollinated tree, so as the bee has to hit both trees, and there's pollination going on. Okay, so that's why you can always get increase in yield if you have them side by side. Okay. And the female is right here. There's the stigma, so that tells you that's the female. This is the anthers, the male part that they're laying down. Okay. Now here in the male stage, their anthers are opening up, pollen's been releasing, but the stigma now has dried up. Not interested in you know what, so. Typical. Okay, Hass, Reed, Lamb Hass, Big Pinkerton, and Harvest and Holiday are some new varieties. They're all A's, and then the B's are the Bacons and Zutanos. They've done some trials with the bees and trying to figure out what was actually the best pollinizer, and the data is showing Zutano is the best pollinizer, Bacon's second, Fuertes not so good for some reason, although it is the bee. Surprise is a new one. They're trying to breed something that looked like Hass, but was a bee flower. So they can have alternating rows in the groves. They can have Hass row, Surprise row, Hass row, Surprise row. So, and then harvest both as Hass, except Surprise doesn't quite look like Hass, and we're not fooling anybody. And the timing is a little bit off too. It was confusing the pickers, so we don't really do that. So could we improve fruit set in a single tree in the backyard by providing you a double grafted tree? Why not? You know, why not? Why not have a Zutano, say, in the middle and all this Hass around, Hass branches? It could be done. The only problem is Hass tends to grow a little bit sideways, and Zutano and Bacons grow straight up, and they'll shade out the Hass. So you have to be on your pruning thing. You don't need leaves, really. You just need a few leaves. You're looking for flowers, really, is all you want. Because the Zutano fruit's not really very good. It's kind of puckered. Although it makes fine guacamole. There's some Hass in our, this is in our little high density pruning trial. They really set heavy down low in the tree. And the Hass is your typical Blackwood ripe, and it replaced all the green skins over the years. We started out with, a long time ago, with the first really commercial variety was Fuerte. We had a lot of Fuerte groves along the coast down in San Diego, and really old Fuertes planted back to the 1930s. A lot of those houses now I've visited a lot of these, they have one big, huge Fuerte tree, kind of halfway sick, and they all have a little bit of root rot, it seems like. So they're good. Actually, the Fuertes we think are still the best flavored fruit. But Hass has got some characteristics of the long harvest season here. In San Diego, usually January through August, so you can store it on the tree. I've got a slide coming up on that. And then Lamb Hass was one that the university was trying to breed something that looked like a Hass, would turn black, and also put more energy into fruit production and less into growth. So they came up with this one, and it is pretty good. It's more of a summer fruit though, and you have to, it's pretty much June through September, October, something like that. Lamb hash, you can see the top here, the shoulder looks just a little bit different, a little bit flatter than a Hass. That's the only way you can really tell them apart. Reed's a nice big round cannonball thing. It was selected in Carlsbad on a grove back in the 1940s, I think. And it's actually a really good one too. That's an excellent one. If you can get a reed in your backyard, reeds, but also an A flower type.
Fruiting period? Flower to fruit period?
That would be, it's more of a Guatemalan type, so it's if they set fruit in 2015, they'd be harvested in summer 2016.
Which is the tree, you only need one tree? Is that the reed? Or?
Yeah, actually that's right. A good backyard tree that I've seen really successfully set fruit by itself with no bee flower is a reed. Yeah, it's a good one. And it has more fruit on the inside of the tree, so it's easier to prune. The darn Hass keeps flowering on the outside and setting fruit on the outside, and the pruning is so difficult.
Is the reed a good avocado though?
Oh yeah, it's like butter.
Everybody in this room ought to have a reed in their backyard, right?
Oh yeah.
Can you say that?
When is that saying it?
If I had a nursery that only sold reeds, I'd say that. Okay, harvest seasons. This is important to know, and this is in your book. You can look these up, and pretty much you can go out and harvest a Hass. They're ready to eat. They're mature enough from January, starting in January. We go into July. If you get into August, they start getting a little rancid. And if you get into September, they start falling off the tree, basically. But as you go up the coast, up to Santa Barbara, San Luis Obispo, they're harvesting Hass as late as November. So it's almost a year-round fruit in California. Not quite, but almost. Now, if you harvest one in here early in the season, sometimes it can take 10 days to ripen or soften in your kitchen. And you know the trick, if you put it in a bag with an apple, the apple produces some ethylene gas and initiates the ripening process in the avocado. That helps it get along, or a banana. And lamb hash, you can see, is a little bit later in the summer, and so is a reed. Now I grouped these are A flowers, these are B flowers here, and these are more winter here, also winter here. Jim stands for Gray E. Martin. He was the technician here at UCR that actually selected these, and the university planted 10,000 seedlings in Camarillo. They went through, I think they selected 7 varieties out of these 10,000 that were supposedly good in surprise.
He's watching your list.
Yeah. Or something.
Very
interested in this lecture.
He just likes the laser. Okay. Okay, so planting. Best times in the spring, I like to say early spring, right after late February into March. We like to dig the hole twice as wide, but plant the same depth as the root ball. I had one guy in Rancho Santa Fe. He bought a new backhoe, and he decided he was going to have the best planted trees ever. He dug the holes 10 feet deep and filled it with mulch and soil, planted the trees, and he called me in desperation. My trees are disappearing. They're sinking. And I was like, what? As the mulch was breaking down, his trees sinking. Bye-bye. I said, you got to pull them all out and fill those holes back in with soil to support that tree. Okay, so sometimes, usually the homeowners get them in just a long plastic pot with a bottom, but certain nurseries, like Brocon Nursery in Ventura, they sell it in a plastic sleeve with open bottom. So So you have to carry it. It's real important to carry the ball with one hand underneath so it doesn't break off, and support it with the other hand. And then we put the whole thing in there. Take a razor blade knife, slit the plastic, then put soil in, and then gradually pull the plastic out, keep soil in, and then tamp. It's real important to tamp it to get the air pockets out, especially with avocado. Citrus is a lot tougher, but avocado is can be a wimpy kind of a tree sometimes. Okay, watering. It's an important deal for us. And young trees, we usually situate some drippers close to the root ball and then gradually move them out. A mature tree takes a lot of water, unfortunately. These are water-loving trees. You can't skimp on that. It doesn't really make any difference whether you're irrigating with a mini sprinkler or drippers. Drippers aren't really going to save you water because the tree wants to use the same amount of water going up through the tree. Okay, so that's the problem. You can use drippers, but you're going to have a lot of drippers around these big mature trees. So clay soil is the typical thing. We can get by with watering less often. And sandy soil, like the decomposed granite soils in North County and Valley Center and Fallbrook, they have to use water a lot more often, so just to keep things moist. Mature tree needs 6 to 8 drippers, and bubblers I think are awfully difficult, and I don't recommend them because you need to have a berm. And on flat ground you can do that, but as the tree ages you got to readjust your berms, and you have the possibility of injuring your roots when you're doing that. So we just use mini sprinklers, and you situate the mini sprinkler on the uphill side of the tree, and they work great. Okay, so where are you supposed to put your drippers? We've seen people unknowing keep their drippers right here, thinking that trunk was absorbing the water. It's surprising how often you see this. You got to have them out here in this area here, somewhere in this area. This is obviously not an avocado tree. So let's talk about special things going on with avocados. They have a very shallow root system. We actually measured this. It had 80 to 90% of the feeder root length is in the top 8 to 10 inches, and so right there underneath the leaf mulch. What does that tell you? You can't use a rototiller under a tree. You'll kill your tree. Yeah, you don't tractor, rototill, just leave it alone. The feeder roots came from, well, the avocado came from southern Mexico, Guatemala region. It rains every afternoon. So they never really had to evolve root hairs, right? So they got feeder roots, but they don't have a lot of root hairs. So they're very inefficient extracting water, so they didn't need to do that. So a lot of our groves up in North County are on decomposed granite. They drain really well, but then they get dry. They don't store water very well. So we have the irrigator has to be really on their mark with these trees, to keep them just right. We recommend some soil moisture devices. This is the intensiometer here, and homeowners can use these too. And it's a water-filled device. Have you talked about it? Okay. And then, of course, leaching salts. Now, if you have clay, you can do some mounding and just plant in the mound, and that helps the drainage. They really love mounding, by the way. No matter what kind of soil you have, if you mound it and elevate the root ball, and have a couple drippers or a small mini sprinkler on it, they grow really fast. So I don't have the kind of chart that she had. I know we've got those charts, but this is I just took a couple things out of it. That's a mature tree. They're using around 8 gallons of water per day in January. So on avocados, you don't really turn off the water, unless it's raining, of course. If it doesn't rain, then you are the rain, right? So you got to watch that. It's a green tree. They're using water, and then up to 50 to 70 gallons of water per day in July to August. That's if you want the maximum crop, okay? And it's you can do less than this. A lot of people do, but their trees don't look very good. They'll have a lot of salt burn. They have low yield. Okay, so most of our growers irrigate around 350 gallons per week in the summer. this deal, or more. You guys are surprised at that? There's tip burn. That's caused by chloride in the salt. You know, typical table salt, sodium chloride. For some reason, this chloride is really toxic to the ends of the leaves. Sodium seems to be building up in the branches and the twigs and things. So when the only way the tree can get rid of this is to drop the leaf and grow new leaves. So when there's heavy salt burn, they're constantly dropping leaves, growing new leaves, and they take all the energy out of the flowering and fruit set. So you can throw a grove completely into non-fruiting by doing these kind of things. So we've seen this happen. This will happen with your pool water too. Okay, by the way, back on this one, our water is getting saltier. You know, we are getting a lot less Northern California water if we get any at all, and then a lot more Colorado River water. The Colorado River seems to be getting saltier. Could be recycled water from Las Vegas going back into the river. I don't know exactly, but it's coming from someplace. Okay, this is a citrus tree in my father's house, and this kind of illustrates the point I'm trying to make here. You can kind of calculate how much water your avocado tree is getting, but this tree is getting water from everywhere. It's getting water from the grass, so probably the roots over here, down here in the bank, and I don't know, maybe even stealing water from the neighbor down the hill here. Who knows? So it's really hard for you guys to actually figure this stuff out. I would recommend, just like she said, have a shovel or a soil tube or something to check the soil moisture. The old farmer method, you know, is to put a ball in your hand and squeeze it. The ball stays together. That's about the right amount. It starts to break apart. That's about time to irrigate. If you open your hand, all the soil falls down, and you have nothing left in your hand, that's way too dry. And I've got a grower in Bonsall who insists he waters all the time, but every time I go out there, it's going. He is skimping on his water. Fertilization, very similar to what Sonia had on the citrus, a little bit different. And this is in your book too. As the trees age, you're going to be adding a little bit more here. They do require nitrogen every year. And let's see, they're finding out potassium helps in the summer. As the fruit's filling, they intake a lot of potassium. Avocado is very high potassium, so it makes sense. And it's funny because my entire career, we couldn't really figure this thing out, but just recently, the last few years, they're starting to tell growers to start to add potassium. And then zinc, especially if you're an organic grower. 100% of the organic growers have zinc deficiency from what I've seen. And what happens is we got zinc in the soil. It's being tied up with the phosphates in the manures and things that they're using. So it's there in the soil, it's just not in the tree. So sometimes you're going to have to add a foliar fertilizer or on the soil. Okay, so this is, we got several different methods here. This is in one of my avocado books I wrote. It's something I just kind of threw out here. 6 pounds of triple 15 applied in late February. This is a mature tree. This is to support the flowering. And then I put 3 pounds of calcium nitrate or calcium ammonium nitrate in June, another 3 pounds in September. So the 3 pounds in June is going to support the little fruit as it's growing through the summer. And then as we go into the winter, storing it in the tree for the winter. And that totals out 1.87. We figure we need about 2 pounds actual nitrogen. So I'm not bragging here. In fact, this is not a bragging, I'm going to say, but I had a lady call me and she said, I tried your method and I got more fruit than I've ever had, but the problem is all my branches are breaking off, so, and it's your fault. So it's like, you can't complain about that. Okay, this is a similar slide that she had for Easy Green. That's a simple way to go. There's a lot of other sources of organic nitrogen, you know, blood meal and feather meal and lots of things you can use. Let's see, I'll skip that. There's a zinc mottling between the veins. That's common. Pruning, yeah, difficulty. So I've done pruning trials with avocados since the early 1990s, I guess, and And if you go back and look at the scientific literature on pruning since the 1920s, nobody has ever proved that you can increase yield by pruning. Pretty much decreased yield. So I figured, well, I can figure that out. So we tried several different things. We tried, this is stumping. We went to a stump about belt high. So we stumped these trees, and this was probably about 2 years later. So they come roaring back. And the thing about stumping, you can turn the water off for maybe a couple months or so, and then but they come back. And so we're cutting up here, just cutting the shoulders back. These branches want to shade these lower branches, and when they shade them, then all the lower leaves fall off. We want to keep the lower leaves. So the idea is kind of cut it like a fat Christmas tree. I'm kind of talking about here. But Hass avocado wants to flower on the outside, and so the problem is a lot of times you're cutting off flower or fruits. And we tried several different things here. We tried also a vase shape coming inside, cutting out the middle. We tried just leaving them alone, like we call that the San Diego method. Just leave them alone, don't do anything. And then we had, let's see if I forgot how much I put in here. Okay, this is that we call the Cal Poly style. Because a professor from Cal Poly came down with the students, and they took care of this one. I did this one. And then we had a bunch more of these. I don't have it in here, but unfortunately, Dr. Partita brought his students down in October, and they cut all the fruiting wood off for next spring. So he actually had the lowest yield of anything. I said, Greg, you got to bring your students in the spring, early spring. He said, well, they won't teach the class in the early spring. So it was kind of messed up a little bit, but it taught us that you can't do any summer pruning on these things if you want to keep your production going, because it's got to be early in the year, and then after about June, July, just leave them alone. Don't touch them. We are doing high density planting and 10 by 10 spacing, and they're Hass, and we're also trying lamb Hass. We have a bee flower Zutano in the middle, so we have like a 9-tree unit, and we have a Zutano in the middle of that thing. And I started, but Sonia is going to inherit this, I think. And, so good luck. This got a lot of attention because when the trees were 2.5 years old, our harvest, we produced 13,600 pounds to acre on the Hass. And the county average yield for all the groves is about 6,000 pounds. So we've doubled the county average yield, and we reduced the water. We were using less water than our neighboring grower, who was using 4-acre feet in Valley Center. We used 2.8-acre feet. So this will be our second harvest coming up this week, actually. So we're going to try. We figured we'd have an alternate bearing situation, but it looks like we still have a really high yield again. And I think this is Zutano. I really do. The grower is always arguing with me. All that space being taken up by these Zutanos, you can have a Hass there, Gary. I said, that's not the point. These are pollinating the Hass. And so actually this part has never ever really been done before. So high density has been done, but not with the pollinizer. So we'll see how that, and we're keeping the trees at 8 feet.
Can I ask, because in my brain I'm thinking that you mean within 100 square feet, you've planted 10 trees?
Wait, no, no, it's, they're 10 feet apart. So one tree, let's take one tree.
Yeah.
That has a 10 feet by 10 feet, it has 100 square feet, is that right? Yeah. So that's operating. So we have from the trunk to the middle of the row is 5 feet.
Okay.
5 feet from the middle of the row to the next trunk.
So it's 1,000 square foot. The area before this.
No, we have.
My brain, I was thinking, wow, that's really high density planting.
No.
Like a foot away from
It's
each
10 feet between the trunks.
Okay.
All directions. Any questions on that? And we had a lot of bees out there too. So our point is, the reason we set this up, we have to improve yield in Valley Center, or they're all gonna go out of business, which they are going out of business pretty fast right now.
Because of water.
Because of water cost, the high water costs, they gotta be able to pay. So at 13,000 pounds, they can pay their water bills, at least for the time being. Okay, so when do you prune? That's a bigger issue. We're trying to harvest early and then prune. So we'll be pruning next week, theoretically, and then let it go into flower. But of course, the growers say, well, wait a minute, we're trying to spread the yield out through the whole year so we can supply the market. We can't have every single grower, harvesting at the same time, and that's true. So there's also some other techniques you can go, rather than prune the outside, kind of leave the outside alone a little bit and go in and prune branches out, whole branches, and create holes in the tree. So that's still, that darn tree wants to grow like that. It wants to shade all the lower leaves. And the other thing, we're not using ladders for picking. All the picking's done by ground. The pickings costs are about probably 4 to 5 cents a pound. With ladders, they can be 25 cents to 30 cents a pound. Okay, so we're comparing a couple different pruning styles. All sides pruned in top versus the southwest side this year, northeast side next year. We're flopping back and forth. So we always have a lot of pruning going on. Okay. There's avocado root rot, our famous disease, Phytophthora cinnamomum, and if you see the sky through the tree, you got troubles. You should not be able to see the sky through the tree. So a lot of the feeder roots are turning black and brittle underneath, and the leaves are getting small, they drop a lot of leaves, and yet the growers will say, look at all the fruit on there. In their last year, they can sense they're dying. So somehow, hormonally, they don't have brains, but they try to set a lot of fruit to put down seed to extend the species. That's what's going on. So a lot of small fruit. They're not marketable, but the growers are going, well, wait a minute, I can't cut that tree down. This is a business. You got to treat these like a business if you're a commercial grower. Backyard, different issue. Backyard, what you can do, if you want to really make that tree look pretty real quick, is prune it heavily, or even prune it all the way down to a stump, prune it there. You're not going to hurt it. They'll come back. And then it turns real green because you put the top back in balance with the roots. So whatever roots are there, this is called the Fallbrook real estate trick, by the way. You have a...
That's a good one.
As soon as they start to look good, then you put it up on the market. Okay, so this is kind of tricky. This is, the fungus starts at the tips. It comes in these tips. The little zoospores attracted to the roots growing through the soil. So they get infected there. There's another one right there. That's a healthy one there. That's a healthy one, but the tip looks like it's getting infected. So, a lot of people say, gosh, that looks like a pretty healthy root system, but that's a system on the way out here. Now there's a good one with complete root rot. There's no healthy roots at all. Next to some, there's all the rotten ones next to some nice healthy ones. That's the way the roots should look like. The picture was taken by Ben Faber, who's a farm advisor in Ventura, and we were at a meeting. I said, Ben, how did you ever find a tree like that? I've never seen one like that. He said, I went over to a healthy tree and grabbed up a handful of roots and put it there for the picture. Tricky. So pretty common. I already mentioned it's all over the place. It's got spread everywhere. Spread by water flow, shoes. That was a picture of my shoe she had in there on that citrus picture. Shovels, ladders. Think about it. You put a ladder down and pick it up, then go over to the next tree, put it down. You've just inoculated that tree.
Yeah.
If you went from the sick side of the grow to the healthy side, so you always want to start on the healthy side, work to the sick side, and then you put the ladder in the pickers pick the ladders up, and then go to the next grove. They need to be cleaning their equipment. Is the bottom line, and they usually don't. The easiest thing to do with this is just replace it with a citrus or a cherimoya or something. I've had people say they planted an avocado tree in that spot 6 different times and they keep dying, and at some point you want to give up, right? Because the fungus survives in the soil a long time. And they've have a couple different trials. One said it survived in the soil 7 years, another said it survived 12 years. It's not a native fungus in our soil. The fungus actually came from New Guinea. The avocado came from Mexico. So the avocado never had to evolve any resistance to it, right? So they got together somehow in California, and we've been having trouble ever since. So you may have heard of phosphorus acid. I talked about that a little bit this morning on the citrus deal. It's sold as a fertilizer and as a fungicide. So as a fertilizer, if you say I'm just improving the health of the tree, you can legally do that. If I say I'm injecting this tree to control phytophthora root rot, that's actually illegal unless you have the labeled fungicide. So just to let you know. So be careful. Scott, I'm sure, will tell you about this. Be careful on the phones with stuff like this. You can also mulch heavily with a green waste mulch, the wood chips. The wood chips get attacked or eaten by mushroom-type fungi, and they break the cellulose down in the wood chips. So they're producing cellulase enzymes to break the cellulose down. So it turns out Phytophthora also has cellulose in the cell walls, so it can, as the enzymes kind of come down, it can go into the soil about that far with these enzymes, and then you can create a Phytophthora clear zone right below the mulch. It allows the place for the roots to grow, so the roots can kind of come up and thrive, and just a little bit below that they're all sick. So that was discovered by a graduate student here at UCR, and also a better rootstock. That's really the best thing. Deucer right now came from a South African breeding program, and they're sold in California at about 3 different nurseries. And Persea Tree Nursery is a new nursery in Fallbrook, and they're selling Deucer rootstocks. So, but they sell small trees. Brocock about that big, so you have to be really careful about growing them. Brocock sells pretty big trees. Brocon CNM, I think, will sell to master gardeners and as a group, but I don't think you just roll in there in your car and buy a tree. I think Persea tree, I think you can. Okay, so let's try to avoid this. When you buy an avocado tree, before you plant it in the ground, take a look at the roots really carefully. If you see a lot of black roots, take it back to the nursery and complain. I've seen several situations where they had them still sitting on the driveway, and maybe I saw 100 trees, and maybe 10% of them were wilting, and they should just water. They shouldn't be wilting. So we took those up to UCR, and it was positive for Phytophthora cinnamomum. One of the nurseries up in Deleuze Canyon, north of Fallbrook, is infected with fungus. All the other nurseries are clean as far as we know. So don't buy any avocados that are on discount. There's always a problem with them. There's my boot again. Oh, dogs carrying fruit. Dogs love to eat avocados. Every avocado grower I've ever seen has a fat dog. So I'm suspicious of this one. That's Sonia.
He doesn't like them, believe it or not.
Really?
Yeah, he doesn't eat them.
Well, a grower and I were sitting on the back porch having some iced tea, We're watching his dog, and he had some root rot trees over here. I saw the dog pick up the fruit from the root rot tree. We had a big infection spot on it. Come over and bury it underneath a healthy tree. He just inoculated the tree. Don't do that. This is Phytophthora mingii, a different species that causes a trunk canker, named after my old major professor, Dr. Mingii. I guess as an honor, I don't know how, I like to be honored with a trunk canker. Sun blotch is very similar to a virus disease. It's called a viroid, and there's no cure for this. And actually, in the homeowner situation, a lot of these fruit won't develop. They're not very good, but there's still a lot of other good fruit on there. The danger is if you have near other avocados, they can root graft together and spread the virus. Pruning tools sometimes will spread it, and pollen will spread it. But pollen will go into, say, a neighboring neighboring flower on a neighboring tree and infect the seed of that, but not the mother tissue usually. So it won't go into the mother tree. But if you're trying to grow avocado seeds, or a nursery is picking seeds out of a neighboring grove, say, getting into that, they can pick up sun blotch, and it's been done. In fact, it's happening right now. What can you do about sun blotch? Cut the tree down, basically. And then it's polyphagous shot hole borer, and you're probably going to have some special talks on this if you haven't already. Have you had a talk on this? Jim's going to do it? Okay. It's turning out to be just a major problem in our industry, and not only avocados but a lot of other ornamental crops. This little tiny bug carries a fusarium disease, fusarium fungus in its mouth parts or head right there, and it digs a tunnel, burrows in, salts the tunnel with the fungus spores. The fungus grows, and that's what the little beetle feeds on. Okay, so it actually is apparently not feeding on the tunnel itself. It's feeding on, so it's like a little farmer in there. And then that's not a problem, except the fungus also attacks the tree and plugs up all the xylem vessels, all the water conducting vessels. So how do you control this? You can spray till you're blue in the face, but it's not going to do any good unless you happen to catch a few of these guys just flying around. But most of them are buried down in here, and they lay the eggs deep in the wood, and the mother is usually sitting in here, kind of plugging up the tunnel as a protection, I guess. And so you need a systemic, but the systemic won't go in because all the xylem vessels are plugged up with the fungus. So it's the perfect storm. And it's been killing a lot of trees in Los Angeles, and we think maybe started in the Long Beach port, possibly from pallets coming in. That's a guess, but and it somehow got in their street trees. They had street trees dying for several years. They didn't know what was causing it. Finally, a lady in La Habra Heights, I think, had a tree with a funny hole, and with a sugar amount of sugar outside of it, which is a defense response from the tree, by the way. She called Dr. Keith Escalon here at UCR and said, "What's this problem?" He's never seen it before. He said, "Well, she just told him what it was." He said, "Well, I don't know, and I can't come out and look at a single tree. I'm here for the commercial guys, really." So she sent him a picture, and he goes, "I'll be there in 2 hours," because that was something brand new. And so he went through the Huntington Library and LA Arboretum, okay, and was able to identify what other species went to. It turns out it has a huge host list, so you're going to hear all about that pretty soon. Here's our flowers, little guys here, fruit set. Here's avocado thrips. New bug that came in from Mexico, we think, in about 1996. The little guys right in here, and they brown the outside of the peel, and you can still eat the fruit, but the fruit looks bad. See that? And there was one grove I saw in Bonsall. 100% of the fruit looked like that.
Is that what this is right here?
Yeah, it could.
That's
Yeah.
my tree.
It's a little different.
Real scabby.
Scabby. This doesn't get scabby like
You have something new.
that. I know what that is, I just can't think of it. It's pretty similar. Anyway, these get graded out at the packing house and may go to food service or something, but the grower gets a lot less money for this.
Was the fruits unaffected? Just the skin looks
Yeah,
bad?
yeah. Some of the fruit tends to drop. You have a higher drop rate probably because it's losing water. But yeah, the fruit's okay. Nothing wrong with it. But we actually, when they're completely covered with this, we suggested that we call it a different variety, the potato variety of avocado. That didn't fly. Okay, we have some predatory thrips out there taking care of some of this now. So over the years, yeah.
Question about the shot hole borer, is there any treatment to cut it down?
Well, the suggestion right now is to cut the tree down and chip it. And the chips, I think, have to be, I think it's less than 2-inch diameter, I forgot. 1 inch? Okay, and then they put them under a plastic tarp and heat them up in the sun to try to kill it. Wow. Okay. These things, hopefully the heat will get to them before they dig their way out of the plastic tarp. They can dig their way through a trunk.
Yeah.
They'll go through plastic. So, but I don't think that's been a problem. But that's going to be the suggestion until they come up with something. Oh, by the way, they think this came from Vietnam, Thailand area, and they've been over there looking, and they have their avocados don't seem to be dying like ours are. So they've got some predators or something going on. They did find a predatory insect over there, and they're being allowed to grow that up in a quarantine facility in Taiwan. And it's eventually just like everything else. If it comes to California, they're going to use the quarantine facility and test it against all the other California native bugs. They want to make sure it only kills this specific bug and not some native bug. Crocea these guys cause little spots on the bottom side of the leaf. And this came in 1990, I think, and it has ups and downs. So sometimes our trees don't have any of this, and then they come roaring back with it. Last summer we had quite a bit of this. And turn this leaf over, and each one of those is about 5 or 6 mites covered with a little bit of webbing. As long as you see that shiny webbing, they're very live and active, but they don't go through the winter. So during the winter you'll see spots, but all the mites are dead. So there's a mite colony when we peeled off the webbing so you can see underneath it. Nasty little guys. Oh, we brought in some biological control stuff from Florida. A big mite, kind of like moving around like a tank. And the thing would kind of amble up to one of these and touch it, back up, and then go forward, maybe sometimes back up again, then go forward and jab into it and suck it like a balloon. The mite would go suck it.
Oh my gosh.
We had all that on video. That is so cool. That's cool. This is the one here. Now, a lot of you will see this. This is on the top side of the leaf. Browning. This is the avocado brown mite. Don't worry about this. This has we're going to have good biocontrol with the spider mite destroyer here. It's a little beetle. By the time I actually go out to groves and look at these brown leaves, we see these black beetles all over the place. And they're just going along like a vacuum cleaner, vacuuming these guys up. That's cool to see it under the microscope too. Loopers. Every grove's got loopers. Every grove has trees with holes in it. And don't worry, we have excellent biocontrol in this, usually. Morbia is similar to looper, but they are in Riverside County. Loopers are in San Diego County, and they recognize the county line for some reason. Figure that one out. Harvesting, just keep your fruit on the tree. Pick it with a clipper. I don't like actually pulling them, because sometimes you can tear the peel, especially with the citrus. Watch your step out there. We've got snakes out there, and we found 2 in our high density trial, by the way, so far. So.
Wow.
Yeah.